You still have to open though.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is a special week where we have two events back to back on Tuesday and today on Thursday. It's an open mic day. My name is Sam Alamayo. I'm a 2004 Ram Brown Scholar and a Board of Trustee. I'm co-hosting with my partner and fellow Ram Brown Board of Trustee, Meredith Eggers. Meredith.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I like to remind everybody that this is a place where you should get comfortable being a little bit uncomfortable and ask a question that you might not know what the answer is, and that allows you to engage in this conversation that is about race and creating the vision of what we want to see this country be and the world.
Wonderful. Thank you, Meredith. The Ram Brown Scholars Program is created to honor the late Secretary of Commerce, Secretary Ron Brown. It is a scholarship, a $40,000 scholarship provided over 4 years, $10,000 per year to academically gifted African Americans. And today we wanted to highlight one aspect of the Ram Brown Scholars Program, which is the Guided Pathway Services, or GPS. And we're going to call on Chris Hunter to talk to us about GPS. And we want to open up the conversation to highlight the various things that we've discussed in the webinar so far. This is our 9th webinar. We have tried to tackle some really important and big points, but we want to hear from everybody. We want to give you a platform to discuss and to open up. And this is truly an open mic day, and to have conversations that will forward us in the right direction. And Chris should be joining us soon. We don't have him yet.
I just opened the chat for everybody, so feel free to add any questions, any comments, anything that you'd like to share about the series so far if you've been participating. Feel free to let us know what you've liked the most. And it might be fun today if everybody can just make a comment in the comments and let us know where you're coming in from. So just list your name and where you're listening from, and maybe even let us know how many salons you've participated in. So that is open now.
Absolutely.
We're looking for Chris. All right, so I am going to pose, in addition to asking everybody to share their feedback with us, I'm going to post a question. I don't know how many folks got the chance to see the John Lewis service this morning, but they talked an awful lot about getting into good trouble and finding ways to make a change that is peaceful and that is meaningful and moves the conversation forward. So if anybody's got a suggestion for how to cause some good trouble or get in some good trouble, we'd love to see it in the chat. So please join us in the chat for that as well. And Sam, is the chat open so everybody can see everything?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
I think we are. That's correct.
All right, here they're popping in. I think this is the 9th one, right, Sam?
Yep, this is our 9th one.
Okay, so I'm waiting to see somebody who's been in all 9. If anybody's been in all 9, let us know.
There has to be an award for that.
I agree. We've got the most I see so far is 6.
So as we're waiting for Chris, but also kind of to set it up. So the thing about GPS is the scholarship has been a competitive scholarship that awards you at senior year. And you're awarded as you're finding out kind of the results from your college application process. But one of the questions that we continuously hear from scholars, as well as those that are applying through the scholars program and the captains, is the application process is not easy for many kids, and especially those that are quite talented in identifying a school or different processes. Little things prevent students from being able to engage through the process, and little coaching, be it in and being able to identify and write the right type of essays, apply to all the various scholarship, and being able to kind of manage that college application process is quite tough when you come from an environment, from the socioeconomic status that most of us Ron Brown scholars come from. So the GPS program has provided almost a virtual coach and also an environment that like-minded African Americans that are going through the same exact process could connect with each other and help each other through that application process. From the office, Kia and Chris, as well as Mike Mallory and Vanessa and Anita, they've done a phenomenal job of supporting that program. The Fund 2 Foundation, through the Robert Smith's Foundation, has provided generous funding specifically for that program as well. And that program has done a phenomenal job of, one, identifying the coaching need that is required and to level the field during the application process.
Yeah, I think that's great, Sam. And another thing that I hear people talk about is that the GPS program also becomes beneficial for parents. Is that true?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's the other point of the parents as much beneficiaries and participants of the GPS program as the students, because at the end of the day, they also have a hard time finding and identifying the continuous support that is required.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, all right, are we still missing Chris?
Yeah, but we could also get started with anybody that they could raise their hands.
Chris has just raised his hand. He's here.
Yes. All right.
We'll let him in. By the way, just want to announce openly that Isaac Price has definitely been to all 9. So.
Wonderful. Isaac is our winner. All right. Oh, I think you need to let him in.
Okay.
Sorry to put that on you today.
No problem.
I don't have the control panel. I'm not on the driver's seat right now.
Okay, he is now talking.
Yes.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
How you guys doing?
Sorry to put you on the spot. We want to hear from you on the STEM program and on the GPS program.
Absolutely. Well, so everything you say about GPS is absolutely true. We've been working to support college applicants in their junior and senior years since about 2016. And a couple of years ago, we recognized that there are particular hurdles facing young people of color who are interested in pursuing careers and educations in the sciences. So most people know, but if you don't, STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. And kids going into those fields have particular needs, I guess we can say, and have to overcome hurdles that some of their peers who are like I was in the humanities may not face. So that could be, anything from being discouraged from taking the most challenging courses to not having access to advanced courses in the sciences, all of that stuff. And what we do is we step in and we kind of work to supplement the advising that they're getting in their schools to really push the students to challenge themselves. And we also kind of function as brokers or middlemen, connecting those students in much the way that the Leaders Network does with older students to job opportunities. We try and do the same thing for high school students and get them hooked into research opportunities, whether those are in industry or in academia. We try and connect them with enrichment opportunities, often in the summertime. All of those things are really crucial for building the kinds of strong resumes that are required to get into competitive STEM-specific programs in schools. So if you're applying to an engineering program, or if you're applying to a school like MIT, having a resume that can demonstrate your commitment to your particular field is a huge value. And we've had tremendous success getting kids hooked up with opportunities like this. We had two GPS STEM 101 students who are working together to do tissue culturing over a summer. We've had lots of volunteers in hospitals, just a whole range of things from genetics to pharmaceuticals to engineering to various kinds of computer technology. So this program's ultimate goal really is to start to remedy the underrepresentation of African Americans in the fields of science and engineering employment. And we're slowly but steadily filling that pipeline with talent. I mean, honestly, as people have said at various points in these seminars, I don't really think the pipeline is always the problem. And if you look at the research, we've plugged a lot of pipeline leaks for women in STEM, and yet women are still radically underrepresented, whether it's in academia or in industry, in spite of the fact that, between the BA and the PhD, they're now roughly at parity. So, the pipeline isn't the whole thing, but I think the more prepared we can get these students and the more students we can get in on the front end, the better we will do in the long run. And so STEM 101 has been working toward that goal for the last couple of years. And I think so far with tremendous success. We're hoping to get some money now to expand the numbers, which will, as ever, require us to staff up and recruit. But the model that Kaya set up with GPS generally works incredibly well with only a very few small tweaks to help out students who are specifically interested in the sciences and prepare them to be competitive in the college application process and beyond.
That is really, really fantastic news. And what are some of the things that I think the community of Forbes as well as alumni could do to support that work?
That's a great question, Sam. One of the things that we're working to formalize or institutionalize is going to be a kind of either one-on-one or one-to-many mentorship program in which we can use the GPS platform to connect our students to this wider network. One of the things that we know to be absolutely true across the board, frankly, regardless of whether one is interested in the sciences or in the arts or in business, is that having access to mentors is incredibly valuable. Having just the kind of visible examples of people who are doing the thing that you hope to do, who look like you, is also hugely beneficial. And I think there's no better community of exemplars than the Friends of the Ron Brown Scholar Program. We're just a spectacular and diverse group of people. And getting those folks engaged with these high school students, I think, is going to be one of our big priorities over the coming months and years. We want to be sensitive and respectful of everybody's time and use it in a way that's going to be effective. But I do think that, engaging in the platform in that way is one relatively low lift, potentially, way that folks can get involved, get out there. And we have a national network of high school students, GPS recruits from all over the place. So that's a way, whatever it is you happen to be doing in life, if you're in college or if you're beyond college, it's a way for you to give back and to share some of your expertise with these students. Slightly more involved in that would be doing something like leading a webinar where you take that expertise and kind of formalize it and present it. And that too would be something that we're absolutely open to facilitating. We have, a large and eager audience for programming like that. So there are tons of ways that you can help out. And if you're interested in that, I can drop my email, I guess, in the chat, and maybe Sam or Meredith could share it out to all of the attendees. But absolutely. I could hook you guys up with the program, yep. And we can get the ball rolling on that.
And to emphasize, this is an entirely remote engagement, right?
That's right. Yeah, we operate on the Workplace platform by Facebook, so it looks like Facebook, although as Mike Mallory likes to say, it resembles Facebook, but it functions more like LinkedIn. It's a closed platform, so it's not searchable in Google. We respect everybody's privacy. We're not, there's no advertising. It's not culling location data. It's simply a kind of venue that allows the students to interact with one another and to form this incredibly supportive community. It really is the best example of social media I think that I've ever seen. There are no hideous memes, there's no sharing of misinformation, there's no unkindness. All of the problems that plague Twitter and Insta and Facebook and all the rest of it, those seem mostly absent. It really is dedicated to scholarship, to leadership, to achievement. And so, we would certainly welcome people's participation in that for sure. And you can do that from anywhere, from your phone, from your computer, from your bunker, wherever you happen to find yourself right now.
And Chris, those seminars, just to be clear, don't have to just be on STEM. They don't even have to just be truly academic. They can be on anything from understanding finances to talk about some of the topics that the seminars have been. Yep. Clearly, you'll do it better than I'm trying to.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, we had, Jason Young has done some presentations on finance and personal finance, and there's in fact a group of students, and this was started by one of our GPS students from the kind of greater DC area on finance and investing, which, we think sort of broadly falls under the umbrella of the academic, since obviously paying for your education is a major hurdle for many people, one that our program indeed was founded to help us all address and that we've benefited from. So it could be thinking about investment. We do weekly seminars on various specifically academic topics. So everything from, applying for financial aid and finding financial aid, to writing resumes, to testing strategies, to researching colleges, to forming your college list. I mean, the whole gamut of college prep and advising topics. It just so happens that my particular corner of GPS much of the time is the STEM specific side of it, but GPS itself is open to more or less all comers. If you're a Black high school student who is a junior or senior, or indeed going to be a junior in the spring, or yeah, that's right, a sophomore who's going to be rising to their junior year in the spring, we'll take you. And the students are, everything from future Ron Brown scholars, super high achieving, to kids who are, gonna go to a community college and then from there perhaps continue on. We have a range of kids and a range of geographies and life experiences, and we do our best to serve all of them. So, the topics that are of interest, I think really anything that's broadly related to education to the African American experience in this country, or to some particular potential field or career that might be of interest to students, all of those things are welcome. And that is a massive and expansive list of things.
You know, Holly brings up the point too, Chris, that because GPS is moderated by professionals and people who have admissions and higher ed backgrounds, it has a more meaningful interaction for students than sites like College Confidential.
That's right. Yeah, you can trust that the information is coming from reputable sources because the people that we've hired are all professionals. And I think that makes an enormous difference, right? These are people who have experience, as you say, in admissions, in college counseling. And, you know, furthermore, when the students are speaking to aspects of the college application experience, they're also doing so from a point of individual knowledge, but of course, because of the nature of the platform, that information is always coming from an identifiable source, from a specific person. And, you know, we can evaluate the quality of the contribution, I think, you know, based on the fact that people generally know what they're talking about when they're speaking to their own experiences. It's not confidential, in other words, and I think that actually does make a huge difference.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Anybody in the audience or out there and listening today who has any specific questions for Chris, if you either want to raise your hand or post them, we can make sure that you get to ask them. This might be
Chris,
the quietest
yeah.
group we've ever had. And it's an open mic.
Because we're not raising some of the tough questions.
Yeah.
But this is, you know, being both of us, Chris, Ron Brown scholars, one of the challenges for the kind of students that Ron Brown goes after, which are in our socioeconomic status, not just being African American, but also coming from a background of families that have not gone to college, most likely, or are first generation, and households that can't afford to hire, forget a coach, but even the guidance counselor at our schools barely connect with you. So what are some of the challenges that those students have that most individuals might take for granted? And how can we customize, custom tailor? And if we could also talk about the engagement of parents on the platform and how important that is in shaping and making sure that they navigate that application process and the last 2 years of their high school the right way.
Those are great questions, Sam. So right now, I think I'll take the last one first and then the first one last. We have, I think it's 735 currently active parent accounts. So parents are a huge part of this. And, you know, frankly, one of the things that we can't take for granted is that students will have parents who are involved in their educations or interested in the outcomes. You know, when that is the case, we are delighted to have those parents be part of GPS and to involve them in the complex process of navigating higher education. And they're invaluable partners. The parents actually form their own communities, and they can speak to each other too about their, you know, concerns, whether those are financial or cultural or emotional. And they wind up, I think, doing a very good job of supporting one another, in addition to using us as a reliable resource for information. But one of the things that I think we can't always assume is that our students are going to have a parent or parents in their corner looking out for their best interest and advocating for them. And so the community that we've created can serve in some ways as a resource for moral support and for information and for all of the things that one might ideally hope to get in the home. So, that would be one example. But beyond that, there are basic things like having a school administrator advise you that you probably ought to take standardized tests in order to prepare yourself to apply for college, for example. That's something that all of us as Ron Brown scholars know, but not every student in high school is going to know. And now with the pandemic, that situation has changed. So maybe you knew that you had to do that before, but nobody took the time to tell you that, in fact, today, lots of schools are going test optional or waiving the requirement for standardized testing altogether, simply because it's so difficult and dangerous these days to sit for the exams. And so things now, especially now, have been kind of thrown into flux. And without people on your side or you yourself actively looking for the most up-to-date information about the college application process, that kind of information will be hard to come by. Another thing I think that's really important is establishing relationships when you are a high school student with teachers and or counselors who are going to be in a position to write recommendations for you for college and for scholarship programs. It's simply not enough to be a silent, even if excellent participant in the back of the classroom if nobody can speak to your particular unique strengths and gifts. And for some people, being outgoing and gregarious comes naturally. And of course, you're going to be talking to your teachers and getting to know them and having them get to know you, but not for everyone. And, this actually also holds true, I think, for the college population. So it's a lesson that kind of carries over beyond high school. But it's much easier to be in a strong position in your senior year to go back to teachers who know you well and can really personalize the letters they're writing for you if you've put in the kind of work of getting to know them early on. And that is the kind of advice that we can give somebody who's starting as a first semester junior, that's actionable, that doesn't require any investment on their part, monetarily at least. It's simply time and work, but can pay huge dividends when it comes time to start sending in those applications. Again, as I mentioned before, these kinds of extracurricular opportunities, finding research opportunities if you're interested in the sciences, finding whatever artistic opportunities if you're an artist, not frittering away your summers doing nothing. Although a lot of our students have to work, and so then it becomes really a question of balancing the employment that they need with other kinds of experiences whenever possible that will also be enriching, or finding work that kind of speaks to your interests and needs. So, there are just so many ways that we can step in. And, part of the real strength of GPS, I think, is that, we meet the students where they are. So, if you are the one hyper-talented Black student at your private school and you're getting all the attention and all the advising and have no, community of color around you, then fantastic, we can be that for you. Conversely, if you're a student who's at a, majority minority high school and have lots of people who look like you around you, but maybe not all the resources that other student would have had access to, then we can step in and provide those resources. And, there's an entire spectrum between and beyond those 2 points. And I think the kind of genius of Kaya and everyone in the office is designed for this program is that wherever you find yourself, whatever kind of student you are, there are ways for every eligible high school student to benefit from this program. the trick, of course, as always, is, you know, getting people recruited and signed on, right? That's the hurdle. I think in general, once people are on the platform, they recognize immediately its value. You know, having somebody at your disposal to read your college application essays through however many drafts it takes you to get it polished and ready is a service that, you know, a wealthy parent would spend a tremendous amount of money to have at their disposal, right? And that our students can all avail themselves of for free. And, you know, that's just one of the things that we're here to do and help with.
No, it's a really important equalizer. I think that's a really important point. I think we have another person who has joined us to speak. Diana, do you have a question?
More of a comment. First of all, I think, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I guess as one of the old timers on the GPS board, I'm particularly, or not the GPS, excuse me, Ron Brown Scholars. I'm on the global policy at UCSD, which also is GPS. But the Ron Brown Scholars, a lot of us early on kept saying, why can't we duplicate this and expand it to more young people? And for a variety of reasons, not just financial, but being able to really have Ron Brown Scholars maintain its special secret sauce and record. I think GPS is such an important addition. So first of all, I want to re-applaud that. And as Sam knows, I'm a great believer in mentors. And so I think the mentoring dimensions are very important. A thought occurred to me as Chris was talking about the number of parents involved. From my obviously somewhat limited experience, and it's not just limited to people of color, a lot of parents, for a variety of reasons, are somewhat indifferent, or they're intimidated by even trying to get into the process of helping their children wade through or think through college applications. So one of the things that occurred to me, and Chris, I don't know how feasible this is, but there's RBS seems to always have a way of figuring this out. It might be worthwhile to look at a pilot project where I'm trying to get some of those 700 families that are already parents involved to kind of gently recruit some others, because oftentimes their children will also be with other children who are interested in going to college, but the parents are just not necessarily AWOL, but they're maybe a little too intimidated to get into the process. And I wondered if, one, you thought about that, and two, if that's something feasibly that we could kind of cost effectively at least start on a pilot basis.
I think that's a great idea. You know, we do have, as I said, a pretty vibrant community of parents. So in one sense, it's both very easy and, you know, essentially free to reach them, at least on the platform. You know, I think to do that in a systematic way would require a little bit more work and probably more individualized outreach. But you're absolutely right that, you know, those of us who are parents tend to have friends who are parents of children of roughly the same age. And I know that a lot of my current friendships have come through my son's school friends. So that seems like something that we could implement, I think.
Well, I'd love to pursue that with you a little bit. And also, as Sam knows, and should I disclose, Sam, that you still call me Mama D?
Oh, yes, please. and my loved and trusted mentor and sponsor, yes, Mama D, please do.
But I really do believe that it's the original, you get more than you give, and mentoring. And my oldest mentee is about 82 and my youngest is about 9, and I have, I think, 3 cab drivers, one of which is from Mauritius, and all different walks of life. And I learn from them, but it's also all of us know things that if our parents told us, we wouldn't listen. But if somebody, another grown up or someone who's kind of been there, is a sounding board, it really is important. So I want to reinforce your mentoring program generally. But if you'd like to pursue a pilot on some ways to, and I'm talking about very inexpensively trying to figure out a way to not necessarily make them official this or official that. You can have several different permutations, but the number of parents who are either not there or not able to be supportive or are intimidated, I think you hit a very important element in children's success that needs particularly more emphasis in our particular community in RBS.
I think that's fantastic. I'll certainly reach out to you after this so that we can get it underway. You know, one thing that I will say about the intimidation factor is that our staff has done just a phenomenal job of breaking down what seems like an insurmountable process, right? It's you know, this massive mountain to climb that's logistical and financial, it's cultural. I mean, all of the hurdles that stand between our students and their achievement, when you look at them in the aggregate, seem absolutely overwhelming. But when you break them down into discrete tasks like ensuring that you've completed all of the coursework you need to graduate, well, that's not hard to do, right? You just take a look at the transcripts of the students, you look at the courses that they've completed, you figure out what they still need to do, you work with them together to make sure that they get themselves enrolled in what they need. We can do that. And then coming up with a list of schools. You know, again, there are seemingly infinite options out there, but if you're systematic about it, you can winnow them down into a manageable list of places that you're going to apply. You can categorize them into reach schools and safety schools, and I think that's probably not the term that we use anymore, but you know, schools that you would like, you aspire to get into, that you're pretty confident you can get into, that you're fairly certain you can get into. You know, divvy those numbers up appropriately, and you know, you've got a list done, right? FAFSA is a horrifying process for lots of people, but again, you know, ideally in that situation, you've got some help from your parents. If not, then you know, there's a whole other list of contingencies that you have to get into. But you know, they're discrete tasks that are manageable when you approach them individually. And if you do them in the right order and you equip families with the knowledge that they need to achieve each of those steps, you know, at the end of it, it's like taking a very long hike, and you can look down and say, good Lord, how did we get up here, right? But you do it by putting in the work systematically, by educating yourself. And I think that in partnering with parents specifically, you know, we can dispel some of those fears, and you know, the results that GPS has achieved already speak for themselves. I think our first 2 years we had 99% immediate college enrollment rates, and although it appears to have dropped to 93% this past year, we think it's actually because we have more students who are declining to share information rather than more students who are not directly enrolling. But, you know, 93%, 99%, those are still absolutely fantastically high numbers of immediate matriculation from high school into college. And I can't think of another program like this that has anything near comparable success rate to that. Although, there very well may be some out there that I'm unaware of.
Yeah, most elite high schools don't have that matriculation. I mean, that's outstanding. I have a question here about FAFSA, and you may or may not have an answer to this, Chris, but everyone hates FAFSA is basically the comment, and it's incredibly difficult for all families. Is there something potentially on the horizon that will be different?
Not as far as I know.
Right. Thanks for the great
FAFSA,
news.
I mean, that isn't my particular domain. Candace House does most of our financial aid webinar and information, but yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
And the way you even know that it sucks so much is recently there's a venture-backed company. Actually, Sequoia invested in it, making it easy for students to navigate FAFSA and FAFSA-related type of loans and fundings in a simplified fashion. And I'll definitely share that the link to the website for that. But yeah, it is so bad. The government could have done it an easier job, that it has created its own gigantic company to help you kind of navigate that.
That's terrifying.
But yeah.
Actually.
Well, I mean, that is the way, right? Look at our tax code.
Yeah, good point. I've got another question here that speaks specifically to the support that that GPS provides for STEM students. Can you give some specific examples of how you support students? And this asks, especially in setting up some of the support groups with other students. And maybe I'd like to tag on anything that you're doing that's a little different this year in light of the strange circumstances of education right now.
Sure. So we support students in STEM in lots of different ways. One is finding, using our own connections to make connections for students that they wouldn't be able to make for themselves otherwise. So to give one example, and this is not necessarily between students on the platform, but it is a way that STEM 101 and GPS have stepped in to help. I was working with a young woman who is still a phenomenal math student. She had an interest in physics and an interest in astronomy, and had essentially completed all of the math that was available to her in her high school by her sophomore year. And so, we did a couple of things. One was to reach out to faculty, particularly math faculty of color, and put her in touch with them so that she could start to think about other ways to continue her education in math beyond what was available to her locally. And indeed did finally, I think, manage to square her complicated high school schedule with the local community college schedule and figure out a way to enroll in, I don't remember what it was, I think it was linear algebra at the local junior college simultaneously as she was enrolled in high school and finishing the rest of her coursework there. Beyond that, I thought it would be interesting for her and useful to get to know some of the people that I know locally. She's also in Southern California. So I put her in touch with a friend and former colleague who worked at JPL, and they met up a couple of times. She got to do a tour of the facility at the Jet Propulsion Lab. Shout out to JPL, I guess, for just launching another rover today toward Mars. So we'll have more incredible video of that. But, she got to kind of take a walk around that facility, which is not open to the public, apart from their annual open house, and meet the people in his research group, see what was going on there, and really kind of get to experience in a limited way as a visitor what life is like for a scientist who's working at this kind of elite level. As I said, two of our students also work together to do tissue culturing and sort of biomedical engineering work. We have a real emphasis, or have had in the past a real emphasis, on sending kids to enrichment programs like the MIT MITES program, the Minority Introduction to Engineering, Entrepreneurship, and Science, which is a fantastic outreach and recruitment program for MIT, but also I think just many future scientists of color's first introduction to what it's like to pursue the sciences at a collegiate level. And it is an incredibly rigorous and incredibly challenging summer program. So we sent 2 students to there. I think we had maybe 6 who went to the equivalent program at Carnegie Mellon. And, because these students are all part of the same group within GPS, the STEM 101 program has dedicated to it its own kind of closed group. They were able to get in touch with each other beforehand. And so we had a half dozen students from all over the country who are going, in many cases, away from home for the first time to do this terrifically challenging enrichment program. And each of them already had 5 friends and acquaintances, right? There was a community there already waiting for them when they arrived, which I think is amazing. And, these programs, I think, are also very good at forming community quickly. So it's not that they would somehow have been disadvantaged had they been the only ones there. But still, I think it's a comfort to know that when you're traveling so far away from home, I don't think any of them were local to Pittsburgh. They had these folks that they already knew, had been talking to for years, and were meeting in person, I think, for the first time there. So the students are really phenomenal about that. They're wonderful at finding and sharing opportunities with each other. And, when I said that there's value in it not being anonymous, that kind of crowdsourcing work that happens when you have, 100 STEM-focused young people all connected to one another from all over the country, they can do things that the 17 well-informed, professional staff members of GPS can't do, sheerly by virtue of scale, right? There's so many of them that they're also constantly sharing opportunities with one another and are there to support one another, in addition to the kind of, direct and official work that we provide too. So, essentially, we do anything and everything we can do for them to help them. And then they also wind up helping themselves in ways that are really heartening too. In terms of this year, things have been difficult and very different, right? All of those programs that I was talking about, which happened last summer, didn't happen this summer. There were, I think MIT ran virtually its Math Roots program, which was already kind of a natively online summer program. And so we got students to apply for that. But most of the major in-person enrichment experiences have fallen away. And so we have students who are teaching themselves coding or enrolling in online programming classes so that they can both kind of develop those skills, which are going to be useful to them, particularly the ones who are interested in tech in some way or another, but also for the purposes of having something, concrete on the resume that they can show for the summer. Although, if I'm honest in speaking to admissions officers at schools, as I do fairly regularly, I think there's going to be a lot of latitude for students in how they've kind of managed their education and extracurricular activities in the pandemic. The admissions offices are keenly aware that access to opportunities are distributed incredibly unevenly. And
Chris, can you talk a little bit to that point? And the reason I ask is because some of the RBS undergrads that I've been having conversations with are worried about that. And obviously, I would assume that high school kids are worried about how that's going to impact their college application. So I know you're speaking from the standpoint of college applications, but talk broadly about, if you don't mind, how this is a strange time and there is some leniency. And if you don't have the perfect internship this summer, just go from there.
absolutely. I mean, I guess the first thing I would say, and I'm looking in the comments, and people are talking a little bit about mental and emotional health. The first thing we have to do is to acknowledge that this is an incredibly difficult time, and to be kind to ourselves, and to allow ourselves a certain amount of leeway. You know, that voice in your head that is always pushing you to achieve is one that I think we need to work hard to kind of quiet, especially now. You know, being motivated is wonderful, but just having the latitude and the leeway to take a deep breath and check in and make sure that you're well, I think is really important. So beyond the self-care part of this, whether you're, you know, thinking about internships as a college student or enrichment as a high school student, you know, I think it's important to realize that everybody is more or less in the same boat. There are opportunities out there, and if, heaven forbid, we find ourselves in the same place, you know, 10 months from now, we will, I think, be much better positioned to supplement or create new virtual programming for students at every level. You know, I know even just looking at the kind of elementary school curriculum, that the end of last year was fairly disastrous, but the beginning of this next year looks like it's going to be much better. And I think that, you know, should we have to go through this or continue to go through this over the slightly longer term, that things won't look quite the same. This is an absolute aberration. And, you know, I think it's pretty universally recognized on the part of recruiters, employers, schools, that things simply are strange and different. And there are lots of accommodations that are being made for that. That said, I know it's true that, you know, some of our partners through the Leaders Network are already looking to kind of lock down talent for next summer. So they're acting on the belief and the faith that either we're going to be past the worst of the virus, or that they'll have enough time to make other arrangements. And so, you know, I think this is especially true in the world of finance, but there are companies out there currently now, you know, at the end of July 2020, who are hiring for the summer of 2021.
Right.
And so one thing that you can do is to say, well, this summer has essentially ended. I mean, depending on where you are going to school, you know, it could be starting relatively soon or in the next month. So if it needs to be written off as lost, that's not the end of the world.
Right.
But, you know, you can even right now start to think about what you want to do with yourself next summer. And depending on the field that you're interested in, those opportunities are already coming available. You know, I think it's not too soon if you're in the STEM fields in college to start reaching out to programs or labs for potential summer internships, and there are lots of great summer undergraduate research opportunities all over the country, and those connections can be made early. So, you know, there's plenty of work to be done, I think, looking forward optimistically, and we can be gentle with ourselves if, like the entire rest of the world, we were kind of caught by surprise and left scrambling a little bit this summer, because we're all in that position.
Yeah, I think that's true, Chris. And I think it's so important that everybody, like you said, give themselves a break and realize that these are strange times that are affecting everybody. And, you know, we will move past it. I've got one more question for you here, and we are sort of bumping right up against that ending hour. So if anybody else has a question they'd like to add, please go ahead and get it in the chat. But a question regarding kids who come in through GPS and STEM, and then apply perhaps for the Ron Brown Scholarship but don't get it. And there's lots and lots of kids, because we're only talking about 20 to 30 a year, who are awarded a Ron Brown Scholarship. What kinds of programs might exist to continue to support them through college?
That's a great question. So one of the other initiatives of the Ron Brown Scholar Program is the Ron Brown Leaders Network. And the idea and impetus behind that was essentially that, you know, the scholarship obviously offers money to students for school, and that's hugely important, but is also a very limited resource. But beyond the money, you know, we invest tremendously in career development and mentorship and all the things that we've been talking about for the Ron Brown Scholars. And while we didn't have infinite money to give, we had more capacity to do the kind of mentoring, service work, and professional development than we were using on the scholars. So we created the Leaders Network as a way to extend that same structure, if you will, the sort of penumbra of services that comes with the money, to up to, you know, it's about 250 kids a year, college students who are not Ron Brown Scholars, but who are Ron Brown captains. And the STEM 101 program is very much a feeder into the captains program, because we have relatively high standards for participation in STEM 101, although not in the larger STEM GPS community. That program feeds into the Leaders Network, and those students then are supported with all of the same mentoring and services that the other captains and the Ron Brown Scholars all get. So I think, you know, it's absolutely important. If it were me and I had, you know, Gates Foundation money or something, these programs would start in utero and continue to death, right? There would be no break in the community. There would be no break in services. We would be there for you all the way. As it is, we're starting late in the junior year of high school, or late in the sophomore year of high school, and carrying people through forward from there. But absolutely, we think that this kind of continuity is really important. And so we do our best to continue to serve these students, not only on the GPS platform, but also once they've gone from there. And I should add, we're using our graduates, former GPS navigators, as mentors and counselors and tutors for GPS students, so that they're coming back and kind of staying in the family and staying in the pipeline and returning, you know, some of the knowledge that they've gained as participants themselves in that platform and that process.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. By the way, anyone who's on the call, if you would like to help us get funding from the Gates Foundation, we would gladly accept it. So we are right at our ending hour. Sam, is there anything you'd like to add? I want to just say, Chris, thank you so much for joining us and talking about these two really important programs. We've captured some other resources in the chat, and when we send the recording out to this for everyone who was registered, they'll get that information as well. But anything else you want to add, Chris or Sam, anything to wrap up?
Absolutely. I mean, this was really wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris. But kind of taking it on, the mantra of Ram Brown has always been paid forward. And we're seeing that in the last comment that Chris communicated, how the people that have gone through the GPS are now going back and supporting their own kind of community and students. And for us Ram Brown scholars as well, Mama D that is still on the call, I just want to say thank you for that mentorship and sponsorship. And the way we close that loop is when us as Ram Brown scholars, alumni, go back and continuously ensure that we are mentors, we are sponsors at every stage. And the power of this program is in ensuring that that continuity always happens. With that, I would say thank you so much for everybody, and see you next week.
Thanks everybody. We'll see you next Thursday. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.